You can take the skin cell back to its original. And an analogy I'll get so people understand it, you have a plastic jar. Okay, I've got a plastic jar right here. This is it's filled with sanitizer, and it's a plastic jar. And you take the plastic right back to oil, because almost all plastic comes from oil. And then you use the oil cell and you reuse the cell to develop into another kind of, substance. And so that's a good analogy if you're taking it back to where the original source is.
I still remember when you came up to me and you said, fitness 50 at age 100. And I was like, that is like perfect. Tell me what it means. And then I kept getting it wrong. I'd say, so wait, age 100, fitness 50. And you're like, no, fitness 50 at age 100. And you just had it. It was seared in your brain what you wanted.
You get new cells every 3 years, but every cell in your body 7 years from now will be new cells, but not your blood. Okay. And it's like having a complete renovation of your car, every 4 years, but you never change the oil. There you go.
Yay. Welcome, everybody, to Unreasonable Health and the East-West Health Show. And I'm so excited to have Dan Sullivan back for our annual check-in on his 156-year journey. And Dan, you just celebrated your halftime party at 78. How does it feel?
Last May.
Last May.
I'm just almost on the threshold of my first year of Lifetime 2.
Yes. What's going to be different in Lifetime 2 from Lifetime 1?
Well, rehearsal's kind of over. I used the first 78 to rehearse. Now, let's start actually going full bore. So, yeah, it was significant to me because I set the goal it'll be 36 years ago in, November. 36 years ago, that I just came up with this 156-year goal, and completely unreasonable, kind of a frivolous thought. And it was just a function of some specials that I was watching, on, I don't even remember the source, but it was in 1987, and they were interviewing a lot of people who had been born in 1900 who had their heart set on getting through to the end of the century and also the end of a millennium. And it was fascinating to me because of all the change that these people had seen in the first 87 years of the last century. And I said, that would be such a neat experience to be born in the first year of a century and live through the entire century. And I was shortchanged because I was born in 1944. So, I was shortchanged by 44 years. So I said, well, I'll simply take that 56 and then I'll just add another 100 years with the next century. And So I said, but I'm going to keep this to myself. And what I want to see is if every time I think of my lifetime, I just think of 156. Moment I think about it, I said, well, of course, it's 156 years. And it took me about 3 years, and then it just became the natural way of thinking.
One of the things I wanted to ask you is about the cool stem cell and regenerative medicine that you're doing for your knee.
Yeah, so I tore my cartilage in sports-related activity in 1975. And in those days, they would take out the loose cartilage. They would just, it was orthopedic, and they cut it out. They don't do that anymore. They use medical glue, and they just glue it, back in. These days. So, big changes in 40 years, 45 years. And it didn't really bother me that much. I would say until right around 2000. And then I was noticing that, first of all, it was starting to twist my posture out of, it started hurting. And, your body, if wherever you hurt, your body will try to protect it from injury. But there was two things I couldn't do anymore. I couldn't do any kind of impact exercise, which is running, and running's always been a good part of my exercise routine. And the other thing was that the muscles around the knee started to be almost like permanently hard, and the muscles themselves were painful. And so I put this down as a goal, and people say, well, why don't you get a knee replacement, And I said, it doesn't bother me walking around, just doing normal daytime activities. It doesn't really bother me. And I had a orthopedic surgeon who says, well, if it's not constantly hurting you, just hold off. And I admired him because he was walking away from operation.
Right.
And then I started getting, we've been talking about it for as long as you've been in the coach, that stem cells are coming. And I said, I'm just going to wait till stem cells are actually here. But you'll remember last year I got really interested in OsteoStrong, which is not going into detail here on the podcast, but it is a exercise program where there's 4 machines, and you're only spending about a half a minute on each machine and 10 seconds of intense exercise, 4 different positions. And one of the impacts, about 8 sessions in, I'm probably in around session 14 right now, all the pain and all the muscles in my body went away, and my posture rearranged itself. So I went back to normal posture. But then I had the direct pain of the knee. So the pain that the rest of the body was trying to protect me from, I just got a full dose of it. And but at the same time, I discovered this doctor who is in Argentina, Dr. Mobilia. And long story short, last week, I had the right stem cells taken out of my body. So they use fat cells as the main stem cell source. And then they need a medium, which is white blood cells. And I had that taken out. And this is at a clinic, Maxwell Clinic in Nashville. David Hasse, Dr. Hasse. And so they arranged the whole thing. They got the necessary ingredients and they packaged them up. They have to be frozen overnight, and then they're shipped to Argentina, which might have been easier before COVID, but getting biological stuff across international borders is more complicated these days. But they got it down there the next day. Dr. Mobilia checked them out to see that they would be good. They would be good cells for his formula, and that takes about 3 weeks for him to create a culture. And then that's a culture that's a liquid culture, and it goes into a syringe. And he starts off with 1 injection. So I just go not to Argentina, but to Monterrey, Mexico, where he has another clinic. And he'll give me an injection, and then he'll see with the progress, and then might require a second injection, might require a third, but there's very good prospects. And he's been doing this for years, that there's a very good prospect that by the end of 2023, I'll have essentially my original completely healthy cartilage back. So
man.
And that's been on my checklist for a long time. And you've worked on me, and got interrupted but he does such advanced work that this is pretty simple stuff for him.
Well, and it's pretty exciting because especially with like Dr. Tim Nelson, who's in Strategic Coach now with his FDA approval to regenerate hearts.
Heart muscles for newborn
Yeah.
babies.
Yeah, I think that's, it's just the beginning of things breaking wide open. And that's what I tell people all the time is if you can keep your joint, like let's nurse it along with the technology that we've got. And, we're still using some of these umbilical cord allografts and getting great results, but it's not regrowing the entire structure like you're getting done. This is the next level. And so it's one of those 10X. And I just read my favorite book by you and Benjamin Hardy, 10X is easier than 2X. And so I look at this as a 10X jump for you when it comes to your health.
Yeah. And I think, it's potentially a 10X for, for many, many other things. I'm just experiencing it with a very, very specific requirement, which is cartilage in your left knee. And cartilage, isn't a complex organ. It's a very simple thing. And, but some of the more advanced things that Dr. Mobilia was talking about when I first met him. And, I've got signs on the wall, when you come into Strategic Coach. You've been to our Toronto office, you've been to our Chicago office. On the wall, I have something that I said that your eyes only see and your ears only hear what your brain is looking for. Okay, my brain was looking for a solution to my cartilage, and with the internet being what it was and networking being what it is these days, if you tell your brain you're looking for something, you'll come across the solution.
Yeah, no question about it. And I think the group that you've created that was the Lifetime Extender program, which is now the Age Reversal Future, that's just where you've got your eyes wide open and your ears wide open. And I've learned so much being in that group. What was the big moment that made you decide to launch that group?
Well, two things. One is that we introduced it into the coach program for our entrepreneurs in 1993. And then every couple of years, we do a survey of what tools people are using, what tools seem to be making the greatest impact. And these are thinking tools. So our whole program is based on giving people sort of prompts, if you will, by asking them questions about some aspect of their entrepreneurial life. It could be their business life, it could be their personal life, and increasingly it's their health life, it's their health and fitness life. And so then I'm affiliated with Peter Diamandis. So our company and his main company collaborated 11 years ago, and we created a once a year event. It's about 4 days, 4 very full days, and all aspects of advanced cutting edge technology. And 11 years ago, this whole thing about regenerative medicine was really a promise, but there wasn't a lot of practical breakthroughs that individuals could do. But certainly within the last 5 years, there's the one area that's shot two areas that have shot fastest ahead of all the technologies being, for example, alternative energy sources and, all sorts of advanced. The two that have run ahead the fastest and have actually exceeded expectations of 11 years ago were one, artificial intelligence, and we've seen what's just happened in the last 3 or 4 months. And but the second one was regenerative medicine. And there's two aspects to the these are the longevity sciences. There's two aspects. One is where you can just get your body to heal itself. You can just give your body encouragement and trigger. So that's sort of rejuvenation. I mean, you're not you're not changing, you're not really intervening. And, it covers very practical things like better sleep, better nutrition, better exercise. But regenerative medicine is where you're actually going in and using cells that exist in one part of your body, in my case, fat cells. Then they can take the cell and take it right back to its universal status as a cell before it differentiates. So you have a fat cell, which is a differentiated cell, and they take it back to its original shape. And then they redirect that cell to become another specialized cell. In this case, it's cartilage cell. Yeah. And this is like splitting the atom, in terms of its significance. And we actually had the good fortune through my relationship with Peter Diamandis to meet Dr. Yamanaka. He's at a place called the Gladstone Institute in San Francisco. And he's the man who said you can take a skin cell and you can take the skin cell back to its original. And an analogy I'll get so people understand it, you have a plastic jar. Okay, I've got a plastic jar right here. This is it's filled with sanitizer, and it's a plastic jar. And you take the plastic right back to oil, because almost all plastic comes from oil. And then you use the oil cell and you reuse the cell to develop into another kind of substance and everything. So that's a good analogy of you're taking it back to where the original source is. And then I want to get the pronunciation here right, but they're called pluripotent. Pluripotent, and that's the state, so that when babies first start to form and they're just 1 day old as a fetus, they have all cells, and the cells are in a universal, they're in an undifferentiated state, and then throughout pregnancy they actually differentiate into all the organs of the body. They can now do that with just a cell from your own body. They can take it back to its original shape. And so I was on the trip 2 years ago with Peter, where we went Boston, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York. That's the East Coast trip, and we saw 30 different labs and clinics and scientific labs came and presented their breakthroughs. And a lot of them were in clinical trials, so it wasn't really available. But when I go to a conference like that, I don't take any notes whatsoever. I just sit there. There's a big message that's going to come to me during the 5 or 6 days. And what came to me was that first hour that we have of the Lifetime Extender, where we get people to extend in the same way I did with going to 156. I put them through a thinking process and they extend. And most of our entrepreneurs, either the first time they do it or the second time they do it, they've got their age extension in their mind over 100 years old. So I was sitting there, I said, we've got this first hour. Everybody tells us this is one of the most impactful tools in our entire program. But it's just an hour. I mean, we never really revisited it. So the big thing that came to me, Reagan, out of that first trip was it's time to take that first hour and make it into an entire program. So we started that, and you were one of the founders with us, and you're one of the main sources of knowledge as we went through the first year. And I think it had an enormous impact on everybody.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's how this, first of all, the program called the Lifetime Extender, which was the first year. But I began to see that all of our coach clients have already done that. They've already extended their age. And now it's time for a more specific definition of what we're really working at. And it seems to me that age reversal is something that can really be measured, can be measured on an annual basis. the difference between your chronological age, calendar age, and your biological age. So 6 years ago, I had this done using blood test, and I was 73, but my 73 on the calendar, but my biological age was 74. Okay, and this is in spite of me doing loads of work over the last 20 years. And I said, this is not good. So in 6 years, my chronological age is 6 years older on the calendar, but my biological age is 6 years below what it was 6 years ago. And one of the big impacts was coming to your clinic. I made a big jump just after the 2-year period coming to your clinic in Utah, and I was down into the 60s again, and in 4 weeks I'll be 79, but it'll be 11-year difference, 79 chronological, but I'll be 68, and with a lot of great coaching where you can drop it another year, you can drop it another year, drop it another year. And then you and I talked, and you created a great physical fitness test called Fitness 50 at age 100.
Yes.
And that was just extraordinarily impactful on everybody, because you just gave them 11 exercises, that if you could do it at this level, you're fit as a 50-year-old. If you do it at this level, you're fitter than a 50-year-old. And if you're at this level, it's the same exercise, but you're performing each of them better. You would be fittest. You'd be the fittest 50-year-old, but at age 100.
Right.
So, and I know that's had a big impact on your own clientele.
Yeah, that's been really fun. And I still remember when you came up to me and you said, Fitness 50 at age 100. And I was like, that is like perfect. Tell me what it means. And then I kept getting it wrong. I'd say, so wait, age 100, fitness 50. And you're like, no, Fitness 50 at age 100. And you just had it. It was seared in your brain what you wanted. And then I went to work and found the 11 criteria that I thought was the most important. The only changes we've made is we cut the burpees in half, because I was looking at these CrossFit athletes. When I looked at the fittest 50-year-olds, I was like, that's just not even realistic. That's like the 0.001%.
Well, and burpees is just one of the activities that you don't have any natural motivation to continue doing.
You feel the same about burpees as I do, it sounds like.
Yeah. I said,
kissing the ground. Yeah.
And I said, your grip strength, your plank strength, all the others, they're fantastic. You can work on those every single day, and I work on some of them every day, but I don't work at all of them every day,
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where we are after 1 year. And now I'm a year into the second 78. So I was halfway 78 last May, and now I'm at the end of my first year. And I would say in the last year, I've made more progress than previously.
Than the previous year or the previous?
No, previous. I've made far more progress.
So you would say from age 78 to 79 has been your biggest leap yet when it comes to your health?
Yeah.
That's amazing. So
a lot of it is just the incredible impact of artificial intelligence on this whole regenerative medicine thing, is that there's just so much more that tests tell us today than they told us even 5 years ago.
What would you say the most important tests are for people right now, or for you in your life? What have you found most beneficial? I know Insight Tracker, that's a big one.
Well, Insight Tracker is a report, and they zero in directly on the topic here. They want you to know the difference between your chronological age and your biological age, and I think it's terrific. And you do it with 43. You take probably about 5 vials of blood. So every quarter you get, and they'll come to your house. I mean, it's out of Boston, and they do it in Canada, and it doesn't require a doctor's, a doctor's slip to have the blood test. And so, they either come to our house in Toronto or we go to a local lab, and they send the documentation, which is accepted. And then 3 weeks later, you get back the report. And it's a beautifully designed website. So they show you each of the 43 markers. And it's either green, that you're reversing your age with this particular marker, or yellow, or red, And then they pick 5 things that have been red, and they say, now here's where you have to focus. But it doesn't really require medicines at all. Okay, it just requires you're not eating the right foods, you're not eating the foods at the right time, and you're not sleeping, you're not exercising enough. So, and then they give you direction on which exercise to do. But your fitness 50 at age 100, I would say, is good for 98% of people who are in the program. I'm most interested in our coach clients.
And I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the new Fitness 25 at age 50. Have you seen it yet?
That's really great, because we have younger and younger successful entrepreneurs in the program. I mean, we're getting 20-year-olds now who are more advanced than my 50-year-olds when I first started coaching, and a lot of tech, a lot of them are, internet and artificial intelligence now and everything else. So there's whole new skill sets, whole entrepreneurial opportunities right now. And they're saying, fitness 50 at age 100. What about fitness 30? And so I'm really happy that you introduced this.
Yeah, I worked with my trainer, who's the former quarterback for University of Wyoming, and he helps people. We want people to have a muscled up future. So he helps them get muscled up. And I said, hey, Tristan, I've got the fitness 50 at age 100. Let's create the fitness 25 at age 50. So he helped me with that. And he created t-shirts. So we've got t-shirts that say deadlift till you die, because one of it's, lifting heavy things. And so on the fitness 25, we put a lot more emphasis on, being able to lift a certain amount of weight, and strength is measurable in that one.
Yeah. I'll just make a little addendum to my last year. Actually, COVID, I made a tremendous jump in bone density. I went up 5 percentage points in bone density during the 2 years of COVID, and it was squats, basically very heavy squats. And I have really good bone density figures, but I'm at 1.43. So 1 is where you should be, and I'm at 1.43. Right. And your bone density is directly related to how much muscle you can have.
Yep. Yeah. And your muscle is what's going to build your bone density too. And Dan was doing suitcase squats with dumbbells. And so you're not putting a bunch of pressure on your back, or no risk of herniations when you do it that way. And I remember you and I spoke, and you're getting up to like 70-pound dumbbells, if I remember correctly.
60 in each hand. Yeah.
So that's a lot. And so that increases your grip strength, which
and it's dropped my blood pressure both at the top and bottom, because I'm still on blood pressure medicines, but I have a goal that by August of 2024, I'm off all prescription drugs. I'm not taking prescription drugs for anything. And that includes ADD. I take Adderall. And then I have sleep medicines at night. And, I use Aura, or I have my Aura ring. And I just completed a stretch where I did over 90 with my sleep Aura score, which is really good. I'm very energized. I think my energy levels are greater going on 79 than when they were going on 49. I used to nap, when we would take a plane trip, I'd fall asleep on the flight and everything else. And I haven't had a nap, I bet, in 2 or 3 years. I just, but my sleep is better at night. And I think that's one of the reasons.
Wow. So, and this is interesting because most people, to use a Dan Sullivan phrase, I use him often because you're a great mentor, but a lot of people in their 70s, even in their 60s, they go to the waiting room. They turn things off. They say, well, I'm checked out. I'm just going to wait until
Or pickup.
Yeah, they're ready to be recycled.
Yeah, no thought will speed up your dying process faster than retiring.
That's it. Yes.
I mean, in other fields like racehorses, retire means that you send them to the glue factory. You recycle the parts. Battleships get retired; they go to scrap metal, and and my feeling is people who are corporate employees, they have no choice. There's mandatory retirement, but entrepreneurs have a choice. I mean, you made a choice at the beginning of your life not to lead a normal life, and then they get influenced. I find there's 3 decades of life that are the toughest psychologically, and I think the teens are by far the most psychologically, emotionally troubling, should I say. They're troubling. There's a lot of unknown factors that you experience as a teenager. And then the second one, I think, is 30 to 40. And I think the reason is because your body, first of all, generally, if you grow up in good conditions, you get an enormous amount of support from your parents, from your teachers, from other people. People invest enormously in people until they're about 30, and I'm talking financial interest, giving people opportunity and everything. Yep. And the same thing with the body. You continue to grow muscle until you're 30, but after 30, you're supposed to, from a fertility standpoint, you're supposed to have done what you're supposed to do by age 30. And that's all nature cares about. It cares about, did you multiply yourself?
Yep.
But after 30, every year that you don't do extra work from a resistance standpoint, then you're going to probably lose 1% muscle mass per year. And and so I work out way more at 79 than I did anytime easily. So that's the second one. Between 30 and 40, I think it's whether you're actually going to be a unique human being or you're just going to be a Xerox copy of where you came from.
I love that. Wow. And that's, and I think from a biological perspective, if you see all of the studies on longevity, it's the sedentary lifestyle that you just can't, there's no supercentenarian who wasn't, active. It's not like they were doing crazy exercises.
No, they would just walk a mile every day. They'd get up and walk a mile, and they'd do stretching. They'd and if you lift even light weights, you do very light weightlifting. The body wants to be used. It's and everything. And then the third one is, so you got the teens. That's from 10 to 20. And you've got the from 30 to 40. But I think the other difficult one is the 60 to 70. And having experienced all three, and the reason is that you're given so many messages that you should now stop working. It's time to enjoy your life. You shouldn't be working at your job. And Reagan, I'm as busy at going on 79 as I was when I started the company at age 30. I'm just as busy in what I'm doing, but just so much more productive.
Wow. Well, and more creative. Every time I see, and I tell you this every quarter, at least I get to see Dan Sullivan. I have that privilege. And I always say, you look more creative, more energetic. And what you do is that energy that you have, it spreads. And so you foster more creativity for the rest of us in the room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I did a fairly factual accounting And I've created more since I was 70, and I've produced more since I was 70 than I did before 70. Okay. So I have this as a goal now that each quarter, because I'll be going into a new decade next year, when I'm in 2024, I'll hit 80. And I say 80 to 90, I'm going to be more productive than I was before 80. So that's another measurement. And this is, you're not competing at this level. You're just collaborating with other people, and if you got energy and you got your health and you got fitness and you're almost 80, it's a pretty sweet life.
Yeah. And so how are you measuring your productivity?
Just output. So I've either written or been part of a collaboration, and we've created. By the time I'm 80, I will have collaborated with or produced over 40 books. I think it's 43 books.
Yeah.
And then new thinking tools for the program. The number of new tools that I've created for the strategic coach since I was 70 is about 115 new thinking tools.
Wow.
And these are all trademarked. They're all, they have copyrights. And now on Monday, this past Monday, we submitted 22 of our already trademark tools and copyright tools for patents in the with Keegan Caldwell, his phenomenal IP process, patent process. And by the time I'm 80, we'll be up to 50 patents, and then I've done about I hadn't done any podcasts before I was 70, and I've probably done about 1,000 podcasts, including being guest on other people's podcasts, like I am with yours.
Wow, that's some output, and I've got Capitalism and Everything After.
Yeah. Everything else. Excuse
me, and everything else. Such a great read. And then your 10x is easier than 2x. The way that Ben distills your ideas and kind of synchronizes it with research and the way that Ben tells stories, it's phenomenal. The productivity. So now that you're telling me you're a measuring stick, I'm a direct benefactor of your productivity, because I love listening to your podcasts, your books, everything.
Yeah, and we created 4 new programs during since it would be 14. So in 2014, I was 70, and we've created 4 major new programs. The 10 Times program got created right at the beginning of 2014. And we created the Free Zone program, which you're now in the Free Zone. And then the longevity one, which is now the Age Reversal. That was a brand new program. And then just here in February, in March, we created the IP Value Builder to get all of our clients to start understanding that all the problem-solving creativity they've used in their entrepreneurial career is very likely now to be accepted as a patent at the U.S. Patent Bureau. Or,
Wow.
we get the Canadian patents, but the U.S. is the gold standard for intellectual property. So if you got a U.S. patent, you've got and everywhere that's legal on the planet, the American intellectual property laws are the gold standard.
Yeah. Well, do you see another program in the future as well?
No, and I have to make commitments to my team. I could create a new program every week, but it wouldn't be good for anybody. And so I pay attention to what the what encourages the growth of the company. And it's not just me. I'm just a specialized skill. I'm on a team that has 130 individuals in 3 different countries. And so, the central thing is we have a culture. We have a very, very positive, very, very growth-oriented culture, and you got to be careful not to put people into stress, negative stress. Where they're.
Yeah.
And we have two standards with our company. You should be able to get your job done 9 to 5. Okay, we don't ask people to work after 5 o'clock, and we don't want you working on weekends. Okay, and then everybody gets from their very first year in the program, after they've gone through a 3-month trial, they all get 5 weeks of vacation, actual vacation, paid vacation. And so our team members all get, when you add up everything, it's about 146 free days a year, 147 free days a year. And Babs and I take one more a week than our team does, and that's also very supportive of health. They get to go home at a normal time. They get their weekends free, and even if there's some marketing events which happen on weekends, and if they have to work on a weekend, then they get a compensation free day during work weeks, and so yeah, we're you got to think of the bigger team. At a certain point, it's all teamwork.
Yeah. It's almost like that one exercise we did is the age of your company.
Oh, yeah, that is actually more powerful. I mean, once people are used to thinking about their own lifetime. What did it do for you? I mean, I that one just had a huge effect. I have never, that impact. What's the lifetime of your company?
Well, when I put that down there, I always look at what the Japanese companies did when after World War II, they said, we're going to build companies that long outlast us. And so you've got like Toyota, you've got Kawasaki, you've got big companies. And I've always looked at East West as like, okay, this needs to be something that's bigger than just Reagan. Mm-hmm. And that tool was the very best thing is I started recognizing what policies we needed to put in place. You're talking about 5 weeks vacation. All of a sudden, it just opened up my eyes like, well, if we're going to be a longevity-based company, I should probably have policies that support, even more policies that support greater levels of health. And so we've just incorporated a lot of new things. Like we have what's called the Own the Day. It's like a little wellness challenge that we give each person. Exercise 8 minutes a day, do some intermittent fasting, stay hydrated, just little things like that. Doing a stem cell rejuvenation every year. Those are all little things we put in. Peptides, everyone on the team is, they have access to amazing peptide resources. So I just kind of upped the ante based on that tool. And I wish I had it in front of me, then I could tell you, but I put it out there at least 100 years beyond my life extension.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really interesting. I've got a file on my computer, and it's how many companies in the world are more than 500 years old. And it's the last one that is that's the greatest amount of research, and it's the most update. And it's 5,500 companies are more than 500 years old. And interestingly, 3,500 of them are Japanese companies. Okay,
is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
But the interesting thing about it is that all the companies that are more than 5,000 or more than 500 years old, the 5,500, 2/3 of them are alcohol-related businesses. Okay. And they're either a distillery, a brewery, a winery, or they're like an inn, or they're like a pub or something like that. Yeah, there's a pub in Devon in England, southwest England, that's been going full-time daily since the year 940, and
wow.
Yeah, yeah. So, and it's funny because we, on one of my trips with Peter, Peter Diamandis, we had a neurologist who's made a lifetime out of doing deep studies on centenarians. And he has 800 that he followed once they hit 100. And he was just talking about, and he was sharing that there's one who was siblings. It was two brothers and a sister. And I think their ages were 104, 108, 110. And of course, the first question is, what are the common factors of the 800, centenarians? Can we learn anything? And he said, yeah. He said they have all sorts of interesting things that are just unique to the individual, and there's something. But he says all 800 of them had alcohol every day,
Wow.
but he says it's hard to say whether it's the alcohol itself, because generally it was social. They were having the alcohol with friends,
Yep.
or it was always at the same time of day. It was like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and it wasn't much. It wasn't much. It might be a small amount. It might be sherry, might be whiskey, or anything like that. So it's kind of hard to tell, and then of course genetically people vary enormously in terms of their, tolerance for alcohol, or whether it's, some people shouldn't be touching alcohol at all, ever.
Right.
And some people, their system is geared to handling it, but it does, it releases adrenaline, so you get an adrenaline kick every day, and adrenaline in the right amounts is a really good drug. And dopamine, the event gives them dopamine, and that's a good drug, and not over things. So it's kind of hard to tell, but we have, I think it's close to 90,000 Americans now who are 100. So you get a critical mass, and you can, first of all, it makes it normalized. A lot of people are running into people, and they know people that are 100. Shannon and Julia Waller, their grandmother died, 4 years ago, and she was 105. So, and I met her, I've met her numerable times. So I think it's one of those things, if it's, a distant stranger that you hear about, that's 100. But if you actually know them, it normalizes the possibility in people's minds. I could live that life.
My wife's grandmother died 2 weeks before her 104th birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And she was independent. She lived in her own house, the same house she'd been in for 60 years. And she died relatively fast. And that's the goal, is live incredibly long, and then a fast.
Live healthy and drop off a cliff.
That is the way to go. Yes. Compress morbidity. Well, Dan, this is, I love catching up on all your innovations, and just as we close, a couple of rapid fire questions, but what medical breakthrough would you say you're most excited about right now at the age of 79?
Yeah, I think it's a plasma transfer and plasma exchange. And David Hassey's really one of the pioneers in the field there, and he's got technology that's way advanced. It's done in various places around the United States. But what it essentially is, it's an oil change, and so every cell of our body is new every 7 years, Some of them, you get new cells every 3 years, but every cell in your body 7 years from now will be new cells, but not your blood. Okay. And you, it's like having a complete renovation of your car, every 4 years, but you never change the oil. Okay. And
right. That's a good analogy.
And it gets sluggish, after a while, because it's got gook in it, and senescent cells, cells that have died, they end up in your bloodstream and all sorts of things. so it's a process, and it takes a little bit longer with me. I got a lot of blood, but it's hard to get it out of me. So I have to use a PICC line in one line. They put in a tube, and it goes up over my shoulder and comes down closer to my heart, and it gets to the biggest vein right above the heart, and so the blood is pulled out of one IV. It's put into the machine. There's a centrifuge that takes out all the existing plasma and deposits it in a bag. And then albumin is put in as a replacement, because that's basically what plasma is. It's albumin, and it's crystal clear, so it's completely fresh. And that goes in. And David is discovering all sorts of things, but he says the one thing is that it just stops any kind of brain deterioration in its tracks.
Yeah,
it isn't the point where it reverses brain. So, if it doesn't reverse cognitive decline, but it stops it. So there's no more. And the other thing is that it lights up all the other stem cells in the body. So it wakes up, there's stem cells that you have that you were born fully active when you're born. And then gradually the decades go by and the cells, they don't die, but they go to sleep. They're not doing what they're in. One of them is killer stem cells. And that's why there was almost no COVID in children, And all the problems with COVID in children were government-caused problems.
I'd have to argue most of that in adults was government problems as well.
Anything under 65, we pretty well know that when the true research comes in, that all the people who died from COVID were probably over 65, or if they were younger, they had comorbidities. They had high blood pressure, they had diabetes, and they were self-accelerating the end of their life, and and I got through. I went through the entire period, and I was diagnosed by the test that you get at Walgreens, and I was positive for 5 days, but it was a cold, just like a cold I'd had, dozens of times throughout my life, and it didn't affect my work at all. But I couldn't be in person in some workshops, and so we gave people a free quarter in any workshop where I couldn't be present. I was there on Zoom, but they were there live, but I had to do it. And I said, look, you came because you thought I was going to be live, in person. And so we just give you another quarter. So we gave everybody an extra workshop where that happened. It was 2 workshops.
Yeah, that was really kind of you. And I was actually in the workshop.
Yeah, you were. I remember.
They let us know that morning, like, hey, and I was very impressed. I could hear it in your voice that there is just like a little cold, but mentally or just as sharp.
My energy was great. My energy was great and everything. And that was my experience of COVID, And the restrictions were far tougher in Canada than they were in the United States, and including travel, so we were more or less confined to Canada for the entire period. But if anything, it indicated just the unhealthiness of bureaucratic government. It didn't say much about human health, but it said a lot about bureaucratic fitness and health, which I think is terminal.
The Great Lockdown is really I've heard you use that phrase instead of a pandemic. It was really a lockdown more than anything.
It was the global lockdown,
Yeah.
But they're not prepared for Chat GPT. I'll tell you, the things that are going to get wiped out by the new AI programs that are now freely available. You can go on and sign on now to almost any of these programs. And the key employment casualties are going to be white collar bureaucratic jobs where they're not creating any value. And that's just about the description of 80% of government bureaucrats.
Yeah. Well, even
and corporate bureaucrats, they're busy, but they're not producing any added value, but they are increasing complexity and cost. If you check about 5 of those boxes, you're a prime target for getting removed by machine learning.
Yeah, and we've seen that in the tech sector. I mean, massive layoffs.
There are 300,000 just from the top 10 companies. 300,000.
Yeah, probably just the beginning, but an exciting time. So, Dan, just as we wrap up, any big goals you've got in the next 3 months? Like you've got your stem cells coming up, you're doing plasma exchange. And by the way, go to Max.
And also there's a neuro program that we've been going through, which is called Neuro Potential. And the best clinic is actually in Toronto. So we were able to take advantage of it. And so they do brain scans, and everybody's got a unique brain scan. And what they discovered about me, particularly, is that I've got my nighttime and my daytime reversed. So my brain is most active during the night, and I'm more dozing during the day. Unless I'm talking to someone interesting on a podcast, then I come fully awake. It's who knows why it happened, but that's. So there's an exercise that we do, and I've just completed the first 15 sessions, and so we'll have one on Saturday in Toronto. I'm in Chicago today, where they just have you watch a movie of your choice on a laptop. And when your brain goes off focus, okay, the screen, the movie goes on playing, but the screen goes dark and the sound goes out. And then you can feel your brain kind of waking up. You can feel it. There's nothing you can do. The brain does it, and the brain wants the picture back, and it wants the sound back. And so what I noticed was that on the odd numbers, like 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and so forth, it was really tough. And the even numbers, it was a lot easier. And so what the technician told me was that the easy second one is just a sign of how much your brain has improved over the last week. Okay. And then they increase the difficulty for the brain for number 3. And then number 4 is easier, more difficult for number 5. And I noticed 2 things. One is that my sensory enjoyment came back with listening to music, and my sensory enjoyment came back visually. I was just finding, things beautiful, like beautiful architecture, beautiful. And David Hasse explained to me is that as you got older, you could still use your senses, but you weren't getting enjoyment from it. Okay. And I said, yeah. Wow. So I'm noticing. But the other thing is my sleep has improved enormously. And I think probably directly I'm sleeping when I should be sleeping, And I committed to David when we started in August of last year, so 22, that in 2 years I'd be off all sleep medicines, and then I take Adderall during the day, and I'm clinically diagnosed as on the spectrum for ADD, and I just noticed my focus, being able to focus on projects and get projects done at one shot, has improved enormously. It's been since October, so the last 6 months, for the last 4 or 5 months, has improved a lot. So we're going to keep doing that. And now David has a helmet for me. It's called Neuronics, and you just put it on every morning. And mine is for focus. And Babs has another I mean, Babs is, also comes awake during the night. She's thinking about things. And what I noticed, we're just sleeping longer and sounder, and we're getting better scores on the Oura, with the Oura ring. And so pretty good.
Man, well, what an exciting year it's been for you.
Yeah.
And not only your biggest health jump yet, but biggest productivity. And I can't wait to see what the future holds.
Well, you'll see it. Yeah.
I'm going to be right there.
Yeah. I mean, you're in,
front row.
you're in, I mean, if you take advantage of all the calls, the 10 times calls and the free zone calls and the workshops themselves and and you'll probably be, did you join the IP one?
I haven't done that yet. Yeah. It's carving out the right amount of time. That will be next year.
Yeah.
Yep.
But that's all those are virtual. So you can, they're 4 hour, 5 hour, and we're going to have an in between. So we're going to a quarterly basis. We did that one on 6 times a year, and it's a wonky schedule, and so we're just going to a quarter, but what we'll have is a connector call. So it'll be actually we're going to 5 hours instead of 4 hours. And, and then I'll have a 2 hour connector call in between.
Man.
Yeah. Yeah. What about your own? I mean, you've always struck me as very fit and you always look healthy. So, where is improvement for you?
Well, this last year, because my birthday, for those of you who don't know, is the day after Dan's. So his is the 19th of May, mine's the 20th. And so I like to check in. My big, every year I set a new challenge for myself. This one's been 25 enjoyable miles. So every week I want to make sure that I'm doing something outside where I'm in flow state in my body and I'm actually improving my cardiovascular fitness. So my big benchmark this year was climbing Puke Hill on my mountain bike, and I was able to beat my record by 3 minutes. Is
that in Park City or where?
In Park City, where you climb, you start at 8,000 feet and you end at 10,000 feet, and then you ride another 20 miles on this ridge, and it's just gorgeous because you can see into Park City, you can see the Uintas, and then you can see down Big Cottonwood Canyon. You've got all the peaks of Little Cottonwood Canyon, and it's just my favorite ride. But getting to the top, you see people throwing up, which is why we call it Puke Hill. Mm-hmm. It's not an easy climb. Yeah. So that was my biggest one.
Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah. Mine is being ready to run in 2024. Getting back to running, and it's always been a part of my life until I was 60. 60. I've always done running, not for speed or anything like that, but my VO2 max has always been good, and it's gotten better.
Wow.
So I think my crossover is around 165, something like that.
Right.
Yeah, and I've got really good lungs. My heart is really good, so.
Man, well, that's exciting. The other thing I've got is Murphy. The Murphy workout. Are you familiar with that, Dan? You run a mile, you do 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, and 300 air squats, and then you run another mile with a 20-pound weighted vest. And I'm trying to get it down under an hour. I'm up to 15 pounds on the vest. And so I've got to jump up 5 more pounds. And that one is Memorial Day is the real test to see if I can do it in under an hour. So I'll let you know how it goes. I'll see you.
It's really interesting. One of the things that I've established for myself, and it relates to just what you're talking about, is that scoring is very, very important. And so I don't take on any activity in any area of my life where I can't have scores on my performance. Okay. Yeah. And I have one for my physical and health, and I have one for creativity and productivity. And I have another one, which is actually is sort of triggered by the exercise that we did, and I've written a book on it called Not Being Bothered.
Yeah.
And that is that, and one of the decisions out of not being bothered is I just don't watch television anymore. So in July, it'll be 5 years since I've watched any television. And people said, yeah, well, what about Netflix? I said, any television. What about the Super Bowl? I said, any television. And anyway, and it's just not being bothered by things that have nothing to do with my life, not being, disturbed by things that have nothing to do with my life. And so I have a scoring system that, and I'm really good at it. I'm really good at it. When I get involved in conversations, somebody says something, I said, I'm starting to heat up here a bit, I'm starting to get involved, and I said, if I wasn't bothered by this, what would I be doing? And I said, I'd find something funny about what they said. And, but the other thing is I've come up with this concept, and there's going to be a book on it. It's called Elegant Necessity. That there are things that we have to do in life that are just necessary to do. They're not our favorite activity. So what I've given myself the goal is to do necessary things elegantly. And therefore, like I'm the cleanup guy around the house. Babs is like the cook, and Babs does everything, but I clean up, and I have a goal, and I've got a thing: never leave the bedroom if the bed's not made, and but you have to do it, for mental health and for your sense of order and peaceful order. But I said, do it elegantly, take pride in how you're doing it and everything else. And I think it'll be a neat book because we live in worlds where as much as you love doing just what you love doing, there's necessary things that you have to do. And I said, let's do them, all the necessary things, let's just do them elegantly.
And define elegantly. It sounds like elegant is where you do something with intention, you do a job well done.
Well, and you're graceful at doing it, and you're efficient at doing it, and everything like that. But what you have is an override that, am I doing this elegantly? No, you're doing it sloppily. Elegance isn't sloppy. Elegance, you do it thoughtfully and everything like that. So you're getting pleasure from it, even though it's necessary.
Yeah, it's kind of like every day I wish I could just like have my shower done and get dressed for me. So now I can just put a little more elegance into it and enjoy the process instead of, that's beautiful. Well, I'm excited to read it, Dan.
Yeah, it's just a dimension that pops out of this, but it all starts with, I'm bothered by this, what's going on here bothers me. And I said, well, if it didn't bother me, what would I be doing? And I've got a good sense of humor, so I can usually find something humorous in most things. And so, and usually the person who's being bothersome is creating a bothersome situation for other people. And I say, I'm just going to break the power of what they're doing, and Lord knows we live in a bothersome period right now with the political situation and a lot of economic uncertainty and everything like that. So, age of rage. We live in the age of rage.
Yeah. Here it is. And if you see someone else bothered, it's very easy to get sucked down that.
Or you find a way of snapping them out of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Dan, this has been amazing. I really appreciate you and admire everything you're doing. And thanks for the incredible amounts of wisdom that you've shared with us today and in previous episodes. What would you like the audience to do? I mean, I'm going to tell you guys, get involved as strategic coach if you're thinking about it, if you're not a member. What would be a good?
If they're going to start with one thing, I would download our latest book. So it you can order it on Amazon right now, and it's called 10 Times is Easier Than 2 Times. And the publisher immediately published 40,000 copies, hard copies. And then about 3 weeks ago, he said, we're going to have to print another 40,000 because we've already sold the first 40,000. That's in the hardcover, this is the actual book. And then ebook will be added to that when we release, and then you'll have the Audible as another one. So all taking into account all three of them, we want 200,000 sales in the first 100 days. But this, the latest book, 10 times 2 times, is the best overview of Strategic Coach. And then if you're interested in Coach, there's also, we have a website you go to. We have a tremendous number of videos and audios and things that you can download. And if you're real serious, just let us know that, you have to be an entrepreneur. You have to be an experienced entrepreneur. Your U.S. income has to be personal income has to be 200,000 or more. That's the minimum qualifying. And you have to be successful, you have to be talented, and you have to be ambitious. Okay. And, with no thoughts of retirement. It's not a word that I allow people to say. And yeah. So anyway, we're growing. We had our best growth year of all time last year. We had the most profitable year, and this was year number 33.
Wow.
And we're getting well known. There's a lot of word of mouth about Coach, and so I'm feeling terrific about things right now.
As you should. So I'm feeling the same, and thanks for letting me be part of the community. So go to strategiccoach.com and then get the book. 10x is easier than 2x. I can promise you that book will change the way you think about everything you do and the quality you put into your work. It even goes into that elegant necessity concept that you've got, Dan, because you can do things, you can just 10x your experience on those necessary things like making bed pretty quick. So awesome.
Live a better life, but lead a beautiful life.
Yeah, I love it. That's a great wrap up. You can live a better life, but why not live a beautiful life? So thanks so much. And we'll see you all on the next show. Thanks for listening.